Live from the city of Port Phillip, welcome to the results episode for the Port Phillip City Council election for 2024. We have three more wards, the final three wards where we get an indication about how the primary votes are tracking today at the Port Melbourne Town Hall. What they call the Group A ballots, which is the ballots that have been received before the 25th of October, were taken out of the envelopes and counted. It's not the final vote, but it gives you a very clear indication about trends that are happening on preferences. And we've got three very interesting stories to tell here tonight. The three wards were Balaclava Ward, Port Melbourne Ward, and Montague Ward. And we're going to be joined by some special guests here this evening, a couple of candidates, and one of our co-hosts particularly will help us out with Balaclava. Let's get straight into the results and see what we've got to report here today. Just to recap, we have 5 candidates in Port Melbourne Ward, 5 candidates in Montague Ward, and 7 candidates, another Melbourne Cup field, in Balaclava Ward. Let's start with Port Melbourne. The candidates in this ward are fairly clear, but 5 well-known candidates. Heather Consolo, the incumbent first-term councillor seeking a second term, but also a 2-year mayor and an incumbent mayor. So, a significant advantage, obviously being the mayor, but particularly being an incumbent mayor and a very well-known local personality in the area. Not an easy campaign for Heather. We'll have more to talk about that in a moment. The Greens had a candidate in Whitfield. Then we had Adrian King running as an independent, David Wright running for the ALP, and Sablock running for PEPP, which is Serge Taman's group of independents. Let's have a look at what the results were. There were 8,328 total enrolment in this ward. This has the highest number of percentage votes received before the 25th of October at 62.31%, and also the second lowest informal vote amount at 1.81. So I think these are pretty good numbers to check. There's a large volume in. The valid number is quite low. Let's have a look at the results. It is a thumping victory at the moment for Heather Consolo, the incumbent mayor, 42.51% ahead of independent Adrian King, who's done pretty well. But it has to say, it looks fairly obvious that his campaign spent a substantial amount of money to win that 26.01%. The Greens came in again, another very disappointing result at 13.88. ALP behind the Greens, surprisingly. Can you imagine? The ALP rating 12.84% in its traditional homeland in Victoria of Port Melbourne, and Sablock making up the field at 4.77. So a fairly, a clear guidance there that I think Heather Consolo is going to be the one to beat in that ward, and it's a thumping result for her, really, based on the level of campaigning she did, which I thought was fairly low. But there's a high degree of trust within Port Melbourne community for her and her campaign that she's running for. She was also rather sensationally blocked out of the Facebook group that she founded and was an active participant in, which is probably one of the largest community groups in Victoria. Heather Consolo joins us now. Heather, congratulations on a thumping result. What are your thoughts?
Thank you. I'm really grateful to see the Port Melbourne community come up with the vote there. I'm really much enjoyed being part of the community always and representing the last 4 years, and I look forward to the opportunity to do 4 more years.
So it was a hell of a campaign, more so in your ward than any others. It was a very personal campaign. We don't need to recycle it and go through it, but it was a very personal campaign in some respects in terms of candidates focusing on you personally, as opposed to the council's actions, etc. How did you handle the campaign, and how do you feel now you've seen the result?
I probably feel relieved now seeing the results, but I felt very disheartened by the whole campaign. It was some unscrupulous behavior, essentially, of what was going on by a few individuals, and it just turned me off the whole thing, and it turned a lot of people off. A lot of there are more women like me, mothers around the school, were just appalled by what had been happening and are really just over it. They can't believe that they're leaving the Facebook group. They just think it's ridiculous.
When are you going back into the Facebook group, and will you join the Facebook group that you started?
It's obviously changed a lot from where it started. I'm trying to think about that. I need to make sure I don't burn myself out, where I was getting to a little bit at the end of this 4 years, because I gave my all and made myself very available. And I actually, the style I like to be very available and speaking to the moderate middle. And that's what often came about in the Facebook groups. But I just have to think about that, how we're going to do it now.
Now, so what do you think, Heather, you're going to do differently in the second term versus the first term? There's a clear thread across the results that we've seen so far that the incumbents have been, targeted in terms of people are expressing potentially through their votes that they're unhappy with the incumbents. What are you going to do differently in this second term, and how are you going to be a different operator in the second term versus the first?
I definitely will be smarter with my time, but I think I have the upper hand on that going into a second term, having learned so much. It was a massive learning curve, and be able to use it more wisely. And I know that there are some key projects that I really want to focus on, which will be more challenging in single member wards. So Station Pier, that one, we don't have much control at the council level, but if no one gives it the attention and the push through that state and federal levels, it won't get any. And that's something I really want to bring a lot of energy to. Bay Street, just keeping it not just surviving, but thriving. And neighboring areas like Fisherman's Bend, that's not within my ward technically, but definitely want to partner with the councillors, especially in Montague ward, to make sure that that keeps developing, tracking along.
And just a final congratulations again, Heather, well done. But any thanks you'd like to give anybody, or final comments before you leave us?
Well, thank you, Marcus. I think it's been really interesting to see your coverage of this, and also having your support and my fellow councillors. Just, this has been a big journey across 4 years, and we really worked as a team, not just in our ward, but across all 9 of us, even though we had differences at times. But in my family's been amazing through this, and friends. So thank you all.
Well done, Heather, and good luck for your second term by the looks of it. As I said before, let's just go through a small amount of editorial from my point of view. We don't have any experts on the call at the moment, but this is an extraordinary. Well, it's a good result. Heather should have done a lot better. If she'd run a campaign that was a bit more focused, I think that vote could have easily been over 50, and she was one of the only people out there that had the ability to actually get a thumping result with a 5 in front of it. But certainly that is the most successful campaign probably for money spent and amount of campaigning. She had a substantial structural advantage of being the mayor and what that rolls in, but a substantial increase on her vote from the last election anyway. You view that, and a big endorsement for her for a second term. So congratulations to Heather Consolo. Let's now keep moving along to Montague Ward. This is an interesting ward in terms of the way it's shaped and structured. It has the whole of Fisherman's Bend Development Precinct in it. It's got a small part of Albert Park that sits within it, and a component of South Melbourne. So a bit for everybody in the old Gateway ward, so to speak, at this end of the municipality. 5 interesting candidates. Peter Martin chose this ward over Port Melbourne. He doesn't live down this end of town, but he's deeply connected with the Port Melbourne community, being their principal there for 18 years, and he's a piece of the furniture at the Port Melbourne Colts. He umpires 460 football games a week in Port Melbourne at Murphy's Reserve. So he's well known to the locals, and he's a well-known school teacher. But let's see how the Labor brand fares up in its heartland based on what we saw there before. Then we have Judy Sahaya Nathan, who frankly came from nowhere in terms of the nomination process, has a connection to the area in terms of operating a business, but does not live in the ward. Then Alex Macon, who's well known to some people in circles in council, particularly through his efforts and work with the dog off-leash guidelines petition, lives in the ward, the only councillor that does, and that made a very big feature in Alex's campaign. And then we had Schwartz in PPP. Peter Martin, help me out. Hang on. Peter Martin, how do I pronounce that? How do I pronounce that surname? Schwartz. Yeah, sorry. I saw you put your head in your hand, so I thought I'd bring you on. Schwartz for the PPP campaign, and David Knopf for as another independent. So interesting group. No one really knew where this one would go, but 7,414 total enrolment, 57% of the votes come in, 2.59% informal vote. Let's get on and have a look at the votes. This is tight, and usually we start with the percentages, but let's start with the outright votes because it's important to have a clear look at this from the perspective of just how tight this battle is at the moment. Alex Macon's come out number one at the moment based on the votes that have been counted. This is very much likely to change, though, when the Group B votes come in next week. 1,128 to Alex. 1,121, 7 votes behind is the incumbent Peter Martin, and Judy comes in at 1,114 votes. So very, very close. David comes in at 478 and Chris comes in at 338. In percentage terms, the 3 front runners are all sitting at 26%. You'd have to say it's a disappointing result for Peter Martin as an incumbent councillor, and again a fairly functional council group, I would say, in the Gateway community, well known, but the ALP brand hasn't been able to pull him along. Alex had the donkey vote, which obviously assisted him, which he wants every single one of those votes, and Judy was at the bottom of the battle also, so that might have assisted her. The kingmaker for the 3rd position coming from David and Chris will be interesting to see. The intel I have at the moment is the preferences split between David and Chris at the moment, albeit not distributed, seem to be evenly among the 3. So this one is going to be an absolute cliffhanger. Peter Martin, Alex Macon, welcome to the program.
Glad to have an invite this time.
Great to be here.
Alex, you and your supporters were very upset you didn't get an invite the first time, but I only wanted to have one person endorsed by Progressive Port Phillip on the program at a time. So you got the short straw to the incumbent, Peter Martin. Peter Martin, how's the campaign? How do you feel about your result?
Really enjoyed the last 4 weeks. As most of you know, I've been over most of the electorate. I've probably done 70,000 letterboxes across 6.5 wards in the last 4 or 5 weeks. Loved meeting people, really enjoyed everything except the results that have come through today. Some really big issues across the whole ward. The Labor brand, which I represent, seems to be pretty much on the nose at the moment, and we Labor candidates need to have a little sit down at the end of all this and say, what went wrong with our campaign? What could we have done better? Should we be running as Labor candidates, or should we be running as independent candidates affiliated with Labor? There are a whole variety of questions we'll need to look at. So there's some big picture ones for us to investigate in the next couple of weeks. Locally, as I've said to Alex and Judy on a number of occasions, this was always going to be a difficult ward for me to win, but I was actually expecting to get probably at least 5% more with my primary vote. I thought Alex would come second. I thought Judy would come third, and then we'd wait on the preferences, but I was still concerned that one of them would gazump me. When I saw the results on Tuesday and saw that the Labor brand and incumbent candidates were being hammered, I suddenly thought, I'm not sure I'm going to do as well as I may have thought I was going to do. And then when I saw people like Trina Lewis in South Melbourne picking up a lot of disaffected Liberal voters or Liberal voters who couldn't find someone to vote for, I thought, here's a chance for Judy to pick up some extra votes. So it's going to be exciting right up till November the 11th. I don't think any of us are going to know where we are until about 5 o'clock on November the 11th, which makes for exciting political theatre, but a very nervous time for at least the 3 of us who are the front runners at the moment.
Peter, why didn't you run in Port Melbourne? I would have thought Port Melbourne ward is your natural home. People know you there. Your name recognition's higher. Why don't you run in Port Melbourne ward, where I think you would have had a real good crack at having a victory?
Montague ward is about half my natural home. Natural home is probably more Port Melbourne, but there's still a significant part of the portion of the people in Montague who I've known well and worked with for over 20 years. I thought that Montague would actually be harder for the Labor Party to win than Port Melbourne. Sorry, Mayor Consola, but I actually thought that Labor had a better chance there than Montague, so I thought it would be better for Labor to run a candidate who was probably a little bit younger and had a longer future in politics. And secondly, and this is probably a very silly decision to make in politics, but I'm very good friends with the Consolo family, and I didn't particularly want to go head-to-head with Heather, who's someone I really admire, and who, much as I've been doing my best to support my Labor candidate, David, who's been a fantastic campaigner, very pleased for Heather that she's got back under very, very adverse and trying conditions. So, yeah, quite happy with my decision to run for Montague. And I'm on life support, but I'm not dead yet. So we'll have to wait and see how we go, see if the ICU can revive me over the next 10 days.
And Peter, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us tonight. We'll come back and ask you a couple more questions in a minute. Alex, tell us about your campaign. Tell us how you're feeling about the results that your 3 scrutineers were watching today come in.
Oh, look, I'd always prefer a high primary vote, but so far I'm topping the primary vote. Obviously, Group B is yet to be seen. As everyone said, it will come down to preferences, but, I've run a campaign that's focused on several issues, dogs off-leash areas being one of those, the good governance of council, ensuring that we embed the community voice back in local government, and I'm glad that message has resonated to 26.9, I think, % of people. Would I like to be further ahead? Of course, but hey, it is what it is.
What do you think your chances are?
It's hard to tell, and I think that's the thing, right? It's line ball in terms of where this could go. My scrutineers advised that there was not a significant proportion of the donkey vote, correcting what you said before, Marcus. And, given obviously that there were channels that other candidates had, such as your interview series that I was not part of, this has been a great result. Bearing in mind that, at the end of the day, I nominated on the close of nominations. I was a former mayor and councillor, as you know, in the city of Maroondah, and something I wanted to make sure of this time round in Port Phillip is that I didn't want it to affect my career. So I'm glad personally that I've been able to.
I just lost you there, Alex. Sorry.
Well, unmute, Alex.
I haven't muted him. He's gonna think I've lost you, Alex. We'll come back to you in a minute. You're just talking about your career. I can still hear you, Pete. Just a reminder, whilst Alex looks at his technical difficulties there, if you've got any questions or comments you'd like to make or hate mail, please put them in the comment section. Yep, you're back.
You're back.
In your Facebook line or your YouTube
I'm back.
there.
Sorry, that was my microphone. No, as I was saying, something I wanted to be mindful of, and look, it was something that was a real issue when I was on council back in my 20s, was balancing a career and local government. And I wanted to make sure that I was able to do both this time round. So I'm pleased I've been able to be committed to both this campaign and my career.
Alex, we're surprised that you started so late in terms of the nomination process. We didn't know you were running until then, and there was no groundwork done in the ward beforehand, so to speak. Do you think if you'd started your campaign before nomination date that you would be on a higher primary vote?
Look, potentially, and obviously, the longer you put in, typically the more advantage you have in terms of the primary vote. But I was very uncertain in terms of running, and when I left local government at the age of 32, 7 years in council, as each of you know, it's a full-time job on a part-time wage. When you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s, that has an effect on career, on other priorities, and I did a lot of soul searching to go, can I actually juggle that effectively? And will I be able to juggle it effectively while balancing, obviously, the needs of our community? Because I think, what a lot of people don't realise is being a councillor is basically a full-time job on a part-time wage if you do it well. And like any of us, we always want to be committed to where we are in terms of representing the community. And I wanted to make sure that was going to be an effective, I was going to be able to do that effectively. So hence why I left it quite late, because literally it was that morning when I made the call to do it, and I'm glad I did. And would I like to have been further ahead? Of course, but I'm glad in terms of the people I've been able to reconnect and connect with in the community. Many people who appreciate the need for a community-injected voice back into local government, that appreciate the need for a strong governance framework, and that's fantastic. And, I know, Marcus, you like to peg me down as simply the dog vote, but that's been one part of this campaign. But even if we look at the significance of that vote alone, showing how significant communities of interest are, including obviously our off-leash areas. So could I have done it earlier? Yes. Should I have done it earlier? Probably. But hey, I'm in it, and here's where we're at.
Peter, what's the lessons for the Labor Party in this election result? And tell me how receptive your parliamentary colleagues in the federal parliament and the state parliament have been of absorbing these results.
I've yet to have the opportunity to sit down and have a long discussion with my parliamentary colleagues. I've only been communicating by text with them, but I'm looking forward to a long debrief with them. I'm also looking forward in the next week to sitting down with all of the other Labor candidates who've run in this election, so we can get to a group consensus to all the things that we could have done better, what additional support perhaps we could have got from other parts of the Labor Party, whether it's local branches, local members, state office, things like that. And even as I suggested earlier, whether we want to continue with running endorsed Labor candidates or whether we would be more electorally successful if we ran as strong independents who are members of the Labor Party, like many other councillors do, both in our ward and in our electorate and in our council area and in other municipalities where people know that they've got affiliations but they run as independents. For some reason, the brand independent seems to strike a chord with voters, even though some of the affiliated groups had access to vast sums of money, whereas we Labor Party councillors haven't received a cent from any part of the Labor Party. And some of my people have put $6,000-7,000 of their own money into the campaign, and people think that we've got the backing of a large political machine. That's not the case. And is there value added in having that? Is there not? There'll be decisions for us to discuss and make recommendations to in the next coming weeks. It's going to be an exciting but mildly macabre discussion for us, because we certainly haven't done anywhere near as well as a group that we thought, but we learn from our mistakes, we move on, and we do better next time.
Very good. Final thank yous, Peter Martin.
Thank yous to everyone involved in my campaign. Firstly, to my colleagues. Marcus, I don't know whether you've got the background photo of the various Montague candidates having lunch together last Friday. We've actually worked together. Unlike what I've seen in other wards, we've seen some pretty horrible things happening in some other wards. Port Melbourne's been one of the nastiest campaigns that I've ever seen in any election, in any form of government that I've ever seen. It hasn't been like that in Montague, and the fact that we all didn't have a drink together at the end of it, so that we haven't done too bad, that's been a positive. Thank you to you, Marcus, for putting this show together. It's actually been, and thank you for being as even-handed as you've been. I know that you say you declare you're a proud Liberal, and good on you for that, but I think you tried to do your best to run this as impartially as possible. And obviously to all those people in my other 7 Labor candidates, we've worked together as a team and worked really well. And yeah, some of us are very disappointed and some of us are just worried at the moment. We'll get over it and we'll work together, we'll debrief and we'll move on from here.
Good on you, Pete. I did have that photo. Did you know I was going to bring that up?
I just guessed.
Oh, well done. Alex Macon, final thoughts, final thank yous before you leave us?
Final thank yous to the community, the volunteers that assisted in this campaign. As you mentioned, my 3 scrutineers today, but also over 20 volunteers have been letterboxing over several rounds, getting out there in the community, assisting with door knocking and other activities as well. This is a community effort. And I think when we look at council elections, there's a need for impartial, independent information. And to say, Marcus, that at times you cherry pick who you put on the show.
Well, thanks for joining us, Alex. Good to see you. And let's keep moving. Actually, let's do some predictions on this ward. Absolutely, Alex. I cherry pick who goes on this show. I make a prediction of who I think is going to make the final 2 and a diversity of candidates. So I have one person for your ward that was endorsed by Progressive Port Phillip, which was Peter Martin. So, and I was looking for some diversity in terms of the endorsements. So I can't have everybody on, but I do note that you were very upset that you didn't get to go on first. But geez, it was a great pleasure to have you here tonight. I think this is going to be an extraordinarily close battle, this one. It's too early to say who wins, but I think it's probably easy enough now to say that Peter Martin probably is unlikely to be victorious here based on the preference flows of who comes first, who comes second, etc. So that's disappointing for Peter. Alex has, I think, a good strategic advantage on the donkey vote, but that only comes early. It probably won't assist him as much in Group B, so that will reduce him slightly. Judy probably has, that's an enormous amount of vote that's gone to her coming from nowhere. Whether or not that stays that way, I'm not sure. But certainly if she gets above Peter Martin, you would expect probably Peter Martin's votes to flow to Judy, but I've got no data to talk about that. So at the moment, you would probably prefer to be Alex than Peter Martin, probably prefer to be Judy than Peter Martin. I'm not sure if you prefer to be Judy or Alex between those two, but too close to call at the moment, but we'll eagerly await the results in this ward. Let's keep moving now. We're heading down to Balaclava Ward. I might bring Greg Day to the stage here because we don't have any special guests here tonight. Greg, welcome.
Thanks, Marcus.
We'll go back and talk about Port Melbourne Ward and Montague Ward in a moment. Let's now, if you want to, give us your commentary on Balaclava Ward, which you obviously know pretty well, Greg. Greg joins us from Twisk, which is a community newsletter based down that end of the electorate. It's got thousands of subscribers to it, which is a good basis of information, and he talks to lots of people. So let's get stuck into the results and have a look here. We had 7 candidates at Melbourne Cutfield. I am Polsky, the Greens candidate. Katz, independent candidate, well involved in the Jewish community and across a lot of multi-faith communities, and well involved and well known in Port Phillip communities in particular. Webster, we had Bucking. I put it blue because he's a member of the Liberal Party, but he's really a fiercely independent person. Buckingham for the ALP, Darton as an independent, and Di Donna for PPP. And I missed Wasbort, I think is the... Greg, do you know how to pronounce the name better than I can?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Wasbort.
Yeah, Wasbort, who's an independent also. I did ask a couple of these people on the show tonight, but they weren't able to come, which nothing sinister in that, just weren't able to get here. 9,133 is the total enrolment. 55.05% of that enrolment has voted before, and that vote's been received before the 25th of October. 2.29% of the vote is informal. Let's have a look at the primary vote. Libby Buckingham has done a pretty good job down here and is the outstanding candidate for the ALP across the whole election. 27.6%, 25.34% for the Greens, a much better result for them also. Berry came in at under 15%, but still a solid amount given that the two front runners are taking up well over 50% of the vote. PPP coming in just under 12, along with a good, well-known community member, Alex Darton, who often comes to council meetings talking about housing issues, etc. But respectable, just over 11% there. Alex Katz coming in at 6.5%, and John Webster making up the field there at 5%. Here's the outright vote numbers. Greg Day, what are your thoughts on this award?
Well, we know that Libby put a lot of time in it. She worked on it full time. She's a good candidate. Rachel, I don't know how much time she's put into it, but she's obviously got a good Green vote there. Now, I think Alex Darton's preferences would be greenish. So I would imagine they'll go more green. So that will equal them up. And I presume that Berry and Darton's preferences, they will spread evenly because there's a lot of Jewish connections in these candidates. So that'll spread around. So the preferences flow will be a spray rather than a flow. And Michelle D'Adonna, I've no idea because it's PEP and it's new and I don't think she campaigned very much. So we can't predict the preferences here. So it's a 50-50 chance out of the Libby and Rachel.
You willing to put your head out?
No, I never do.
No, I've noticed that. I am. I think it's going to be an ALP victory on this one. I think the way the preferences will flow probably equally and slightly skewed to the ALP in this one. So Libby ran a good campaign. I reckon she will get it, but I could be wrong. I will be in a number of these predictions.
Well, we don't want to turn it into a Melbourne Cup prediction field
show. No, that comes next week, by the way. No, I won't bring the promo up for that. No,
but the point is it's going to be one of those. We can't tell. We have to wait till next week's votes come in. We've never done this before, where you have the A and B groups, and the B group includes, or does the B group include all the people who queued up at the town hall?
Yeah, well, if they were received, yep,
Now, were they counted in the A group or the B group?
Yeah, no, they'll be in the A group. Yeah, I think so. They were received before the 25th of October, so yeah, they're included in the A group. Yep. If they were received after the 25th, then depends when people turned up. I turned up at the town hall before the 25th, so my vote would be included in the A group.
But you've had scrutineers for the Greens saying that their vote might be influenced by having Tim handing out at the town hall that would come in the B group.
Yeah, so maybe he wasn't. Yeah, no, that's all very
true. There's too many imponderables. But look, the thing is, if Libby and Rachel have gone against the trend in other wards where the big parties have been down a bit. So this one is counter to that trend, and good luck to them.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Thoughts on Montague Ward? I know it's a bit outside your remit, so to speak, but wow, what an interesting result this was. And you could see that our two guests tonight were a bit nervous, I suppose, one would say.
Well, I think, it could be that Judy's got the blue vote. That's helped her. Alex has got a mix of that, and Peter hasn't got any of it. So, I couldn't separate these either. So it's a very vibrant election in a place that's not that vibrant in parts of it, because it's, includes Fisherman's Brand and it's got lots of business. So it's an evolving community. So I don't have much to say.
I must say I was surprised by the result. I thought Alex and Judy would be battling it out for second position, but I thought Peter Martin would be out there in front for probably low 30s type vote, given that he's an incumbent. But that is very close. I'm not sure how to read into it exactly. But I understand why people were looking for campaign opportunities, because whoever door knocked until the last day of this campaign will need every single vote that they've been able to garner to get across the line on this one.
And no Green.
So, no Green, no Rop. Yeah. I think Rop would have done quite well in this ward, to be frank, if they had a candidate, but they for whatever reason they didn't put one up here.
So does it make David Knopf the proxy Green because of his, environmental credentials? I heard some people describing him as the Penguin Man. So.
Yeah, I think that's been interesting to watch, actually. And what were your thoughts on Heather Consolo's performance in this election?
Well, I think, Heather's put in the years. She's done a lot of community work. Having someone going at her aggressively, using the corruption word a lot, it's really made things hard for her personally. But I think it's interesting that the Labor vote's so low. The Green vote's about right. And the PEP, well, they've hardly made it scratch the surface. So Heather will get all their preferences and she will win.
And it looks like no Green candidates will get elected, other than the one in Balaclava Ward. Well, what are you hearing on the ground about that?
Well, the Greens could win in Elwood, and they could win in Balaclava. So we can't write them off yet.
That's true.
In fact, we can't write off anybody, really.
Yeah.
Otherwise we'll have lay egg on lay face.
No, that's true. Look, I guess that wraps us up in terms of where we are on the 9 votes here. It's been one hell of a few days here in terms of getting these initial ballots in. Next week, we'll get the B ballots in, and then we'll start doing the preference counts. There's some wards such as Albert Park and Port Melbourne ward where probably the result looks like a fait accompli. But as we saw tonight with Montague ward and numerous others, including Elwood, which Greg was just talking about before, it's too close to call. So a number of these are going to come down to where the primary count comes through in the B ballot, and then where all the all-important preferences
So there's
go.
3 clear and 6 too close to call.
Yep, so it's going to be an interesting week next week, and you can follow all the coverage through Greg's newsletter. If people haven't subscribed to the newsletter, Greg, what do they do?
Go to G'day St Kilda, all one word, g'daystkilda.com, and you can see all this commentary, all the figures and charts. It's all there. It'll be updated, and you can subscribe and get a newsletter every Sunday.
Good on you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We had a good crowd in this evening. They weren't very vocal. You weren't very vocal tonight, but I do appreciate you dialing in and watching the results here coming through live on the Facebook channel. We'll do something similar next week, and I'll keep you advised. If you've got any hate mail, got any questions, got any comments, hello@marcuspell.com, or give me a phone call, text message on 0478136762. Thank you to my guests tonight. My co-host tonight was Greg Day from the Twist newsletter, and our guest tonight was the former mayor, Heather Consolo. Congratulations on your result. The incumbent councillor for Montague ward, Peter Martin. Thank you for joining us, Peter. And the candidate also there was Alex Macon. So thank you for joining us all. Looking forward to seeing you again live next